All right, so we're gonna actually catch back up a little bit on time. So I'm gonna combine my next two sections, and I think they kind of work well because the first one is just talking about the Universal Ad Client SDK, and the second part is just using it. Right. So neither one of those is too long of a process. We're just gonna put those two right together. We'll talk about it, then we'll do the hands-on demo of actually using the Ad SDK.
And that has been one of the most requested features in online groups. People are asking for monetization and ads.
Right, yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to make money off of spending their time making games? So obviously that's a very important topic. One that we've covered in the previous one, but again, some things have changed. So we'll talk about where those things have changed and get everyone caught up to speed.
Yep.
All right, so basically what we're going to talk about, it all starts with what we've already talked about is the new dev store, the new dev dashboard, the dev.windows.com. Remember that. That's going to be important for you. This is where you can upload applications, which we'll see in a couple of modules. Wish I had. This is where you can create ad IDs. It used to be a separate process. You had to go to Pub Center Ads, and it was his own website, and you would basically create an application and get an ad unit ID and one of the other IDs, two IDs that you needed. Now everything has come to this dev.windows.com. It's your central place for documentation and uploading applications and ads and all that sort of stuff. So a good website to remember and use.
And you can do this in parallel to actually developing your game. So if you have a bunch of people working on a project together, a couple of people are working on developing the game itself in Construct 2. One of those people or someone else could go into dev.windows.com, create a game name,
right,
and start adding things like the ads and everything else.
Yeah, and then when they get exported and they're ready to submit, they're ready to go.
You can bring it all together. So it doesn't have to happen one after another. You can start this process on dev.windows.com ahead of time.
Exactly. So the Universal Ad Client SDK is kind of the new SDK that we're going to use, obviously, for Universal Windows platform applications, for UWP applications. So this is from the dev.windows.com. There's a tab, a tab on there to get to this page, which is the monetize/ads. And you can get there and look around and see some of the information. Just wanted to put this link up here for reference for everyone. The key here is that there's HTML and JavaScript support. So I think previously with Windows Phone 8.1 and Windows 8.1, one of them didn't have the HTML and JavaScript support. And I think that was the Phone 8.1. So you couldn't, we didn't have a way to do ads if you exported with HTML5 and JavaScript.
But now it's good.
But now we're good.
That's what's important.
Yeah, now, clarify, we're all good. We have HTML and JavaScript support, and we're actually going to see doing that. And then notice that there's also C# and XAML and C++ XAML, and then Windows Phone 8 Silverlight has a couple of the options as well. So we'll tab over again, and that's actually going to finish the slides for this section. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump over, and I'll do another transition slide to the adding ads section, and this is where we'll actually do the hands-on part.
Right, and this goes back to what you said at the beginning. We're combining these two ad modules together because it makes more sense.
Yeah, and like I said, we just went through 3 slides and did everything I needed to do, and I'm done, right? So there's no sense in kind of spending more time than we need to.
Right. And most of it will be in the demo that you'll show us in the demo.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the screenshots here, and actually I'll kind of toggle back and forth. So I'll start with, well, actually the first thing, I skipped a step here. The first thing is, let me go back to my browser somewhere up here. We need to actually download the SDK. So let me toggle back here a little bit, get back to the main ads site. Oh, wrong one. Actually, I'll just open up a new tab and start over here. Dev.windows.com, and then scroll down, and we've got monetize. And there's advertising here on the left. I could click there, and there should pop up with a button to, let's see where it is. Oh, get the Microsoft Universal Ad Client SDK. So the first thing is you need to download it. Once you download it, you're ready to go. And it might come by default with the Windows 10 tools. If it's not there for you when you try to use it, come here and download it. You should be good to go. So in a project, and I've got open, let me come back over here. I've got basically the same project that we just ended on. I've got it open here. And I want to add a reference to that SDK. So I can right-click on my references, and I'll just kind of zoom in here so we see that. So references, and I'll right-click and add a reference, and zoom in again, and should see the Microsoft Advertising SDK for JavaScript. So that's exactly what we want, version 10.0. So I'll select that and say OK. And it'll go in and add that reference. So now I'm referencing the files, the SDK that I need. So the next step is in my index.html, just like you would any other JavaScript library, to add a reference to that as well. So add a reference in the index.html. So I think I've got a slide back here on that as well. And then on the website, they've got on a get started, I can do the JavaScript and HTML. And I'll just kind of go through that because I can copy and paste their code into mine. So if I scroll down, here's the part that we just did, adding the reference to the extension, and then coming down, and I'll just copy, come and zoom in here, this line where I'm adding the script to my index.html.
That's literally just one line of code there.
Yeah, 2 lines if you count the comment, so it depends on who you ask. So back in Visual Studio, I'll open my index.html. Take a second to pop up, and I'll zoom in for you guys to see this here in a second. Let me scroll for what I'm looking for. So right after my Win.js references, so this is everything I need for Win.js, I'll just return down a couple lines and paste in that reference. And that's in the head of the project.
And we don't have to change the URL whether you're running locally or you've submitted. It's always the same URL that you're using.
Yeah, you just paste this in just like they have it.
Yep.
And then the last piece is you actually want to give the ad some kind of space. So the way things work with these exported applications is basically, and I'll zoom in again here, the C2 canvas div is just the main div that all of the game lays in. So what we can do is scroll down to the bottom of that one and just create another div, and that div will be for an ad,
right?
Something like that. So they've got a piece of code back here again that I can copy down. It's a sample piece, so here it is, JavaScript. And it's a div, its ID is my ad, and then the key part is back out of here and try that again. So this data when control references that advertising.add control. So that's what we want to reference. And again, I'll just come in here, copy this, come back to my code, paste that in underneath the C2 div.
Right. And it's worth noting that Sierra just named their div a certain name that could change in the future.
Right.
But you just have to locate it. So right now it has a certain name on it. Doesn't mean the name will be the same in the future. It could be different.
Right.
You just have to know we're going to place our advertising div below theirs. Yeah.
And that's just, they can call it whatever they want. That's just going to be the main content of the page, basically.
Right.
So I'm right here just below that. I've copied in this code. And this is actually using a test application ID and add unit ID. So there's the application ID, and then here is the add unit ID. And these are just test credentials that will do a local ad, basically. So I can go ahead and run this.
So that's something that you definitely want to change before you publish it.
Right. You want to, and we'll see the live credentials that I'll get here in a second.
Yep.
And I've got one error here, so I need to change the build here to be x86. So I'll change that and go ahead and try to run again, and we should pop up with that same Windows 10 application that we saw before. And some amount of seconds here in a second, we'll see a kind of a dummy test advertisement. It's not in a very convenient place. We haven't we didn't really plan this out in terms of leaving room in our game. And I could do some other HTML to really force it to be below the top div and do stuff like that. But just for demo purposes, we've got an ad to pop up, and you can arrange and put it where you want.
Right.
And really quickly, just two of those things that you can play around with are the width and height. So you can change the width and height of that ad control, and then you can change your position as well, so you can do a different position. But again, just for demo purposes, this is how you get it working. You can rearrange it how you want.
Right, and if you want to get an idea of how you should arrange your layout for the game, in the web export for Construct 2, it actually gives you the choice of using the normal layout or an ad-based layout where you expect to add an ad in a certain place. And
Okay.
you can do that export and for the web, and in the HTML5 version of it, you can
Right.
check to see how they've laid it out and maybe get some ideas.
Maybe
out of it.
steal some of their code and see how they did it. Yeah, exactly. I actually didn't know that, so it's good to know.
Yeah.
And very useful for this specific scenario.
Right.
So we've got, I mean, that works, right? That's a test ad. It's working, and we can, put it where we want it to, and it's working. But the real key is that we want to have ads that we're actually being tracked, that we're getting in ads, and when people click on them, that comes back to us. So these are just tests that have nothing to do necessarily with us as a developer. So this all kind of goes back to, again, the fact that dev.windows.com is your central place to do all of these things that we're talking about. So previously there was a separate website that you would go to request an ad application ID and add unit ID. Now all of that is done within the dashboard. So I'll toggle back over here to my browser, and I'll pull up my dashboard, and this is kind of my dummy account where I leave just kind of test things, not any of my serious stuff.
Right.
And notice I've got an MVA3 sample here, and this is actually obviously the sample that I've started to create for this demo. And it's interesting to note that to create your ad unit IDs and application IDs, you need to start the submission process for an app. So even if you're testing, you start the submission, and you give it a name, and then you give it a couple of things about it. And once you get there, you can come down to monetization and monetization with ads, and scroll down to the bottom with Microsoft Advertising Ad Units, show options, and I've already got one created here. So this is very simple to create. If I wanted to create a new test banner, whatever it is, create it, say it's a banner, PC tablet, gone.
All right.
So really, really easy, and then I get these credentials down here.
So can you place more than one ad in the same game in different places?
I haven't tried that, but you would think so, right? You can create multiple ad units and application IDs, so I would imagine so.
All right. I've seen some games do that, but I would not recommend actually placing more than one ad at the same place.
Yeah, that can kind of take away from customer experience there.
Right.
All right, so before I copy and paste in these live credentials, just to reiterate, on the dashboard, and I'll toggle back here to the screen, I started with basically a create new app. And a create new app, I give it a name, and it checks availability to make sure that it's unique. And then from there, I go in and it'll tell you before you do ads, it'll tell you have to do like category of your app. So I did game and some subcategory of game. And after you have those two things, then you get back to where we just were. And now I'll go ahead and copy and paste those two credentials over to Visual Studio, and we should see a live ad coming through after a couple of seconds. So let me go back down to monetization and ads, and then scroll down to the bottom here and show options. And I don't know if I zoomed in earlier, so there's the ad unit name, ID, so on and so on. So I'll grab this application ID, copy that, and paste it into my Visual Studio Code, and we'll see if I can just zoom in here a little bit. And I'll just paste that application ID in. And I would imagine the application ID stays the same, right, if you're in the same application, and the ad unit ID would be the one that changes.
And I wonder what would happen if someone watching this video were to use your application ID. You would probably be making the money off those ads. I'm not sure if that's blocked.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very beneficial for them. And I'll probably go ahead and get rid of these credentials after we get done. So don't try that out there. But I've got both of these things, the ad unit ID and application ID, copied in. So I'll go ahead and run this, and with any luck, we should not necessarily see just kind of the dummy Microsoft ad pop up. We should see a live advertisement, so hopefully that comes through here in a second.
So while we're waiting for the ad to come up, let's think about why we want ads in the first place. We definitely want the user to be able to have a good experience. So you don't want to overdo the ads, but at the same time, you do want to be paid for your hard work and have a way to offer a free game to your users without having to ask them to pay for money. So ads are a great way.
It's one of those main incomes or potential incomes with games, right? Ads and then selling it, and in-app purchase is another one.
Yep.
So it looks like we've actually got it up here and ready. So we've got a Pirates Tides of the Fortune advertisement. This is maybe another mobile game is what that is probably. And again, not in a very amazing location here, but this is something that you as a developer, you spend some time, you play around, you rearrange, and you see what works for you.
Right.
But
It's
all in
completely
all,
up to you.
Yeah, it is. But all in all, it's working, getting live advertisements, we're good to go.
Yep. Sounds good.
So that is, toggle back over. I think I'm out of slides on this one. That's going to wrap up this module. So next we're doing the web applications. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're actually gonna combine a couple of those too, but creating our Azure web app and then publishing to an Azure web app, and then we'll get to the final module where you're gonna kind of take us home and do the final publishing process.
Right. So we've seen how you can create new ads on your system using dev.windows.com, but how do you create those packages to get it out there? Things have changed just a little between Windows 8.1 and now, so we'll cover that for Windows 10.
Cool. All right, thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you in the next module in a few minutes.